Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Community Works. I'm Bernadette Welsh, your host. Each one of our shows highlights a local nonprofit agency in our area. Our goal is to educate you, our viewers, about the great work that's going on all around us every day by local agencies and their supporters. When people help their neighbors, everybody benefits. The focus of today's show is overcoming homelessness. And we're going to learn about that by talking about a great organization called Columbus House. And I am so pleased that I have the Chief Executive Officer of Columbus House to teach us all about that. And her name is Margaret Middleton. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bernadette. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So we usually start off the show with educating our viewers excuse me, about the mission, a little bit of the history. What is Columbus House all about?
So Columbus House is here to support people who are experiencing homelessness, get them through the experience of homelessness and into permanent housing, and also to work towards the end of homelessness in our communities. And the history is a really beautiful one, and it fits in well with the mission statement of this show. Columbus House was formed out of an interfaith effort to address what was sort of the beginning of modern mass homelessness in 1982. So this is our 40th year. And Columbus House started as sort of like I think you visited the first site. It was over on Columbus Avenue. And, you know, it was really like a very blood, sweat, and tears effort by the community to address this emergent need. And over the years, it's grown and grown. So a lot of people still associate Columbus House with the shelter, which is now on El Grasso Boulevard. And we do serve 81 people every night there who are experiencing homelessness. But Columbus House is actually a much bigger effort at this point. So we serve just under 2,000 people a year. We serve people across 4 counties in Connecticut. And we do the whole range of things to support people who are in the experience of homelessness. So some people who are experiencing homelessness are unsheltered. They're sleeping outside or in places that aren't fit for human habitation. And for people who are in that circumstance, we have outreach workers who go out into those places. So they go under bridges and they go behind buildings and they go in places that you and I might not think of as being places to find people and find people and make sure that they have their basic needs met and that they have basic medical needs met and that they are aware that there's support for them. And then we also try to help people who are in that circumstance move directly into housing. And then we run the shelter, which is something that a lot of your viewers are probably familiar with. And we also run, what people probably don't realize about Connecticut is how much actual housing support we provide. So we support over 300 people a year who are in what's called permanent supportive housing, which is a technical term for a really sensible idea, which is that people who have really significant challenges don't just need support getting into housing, they need support staying in housing.
Yeah.
So we provide that. So people move into apartments and then they have a case manager who kind of follows up with like, how are things going, you know, and can help people meet all kinds of needs. So if they have a need for documentation, they're working on employment, they're working on benefits, they're working on reconnecting with family, they're working on volunteering in their community or other types of interactions that they want to build into their lives, that's what we might support them with.
Well, see, so you've almost answered 2 questions in one, because usually the next question is, what do we do about the programs? And you just educated us about the programs. What I like about what you were saying, Margaret, is that it's not just you need a place to stay. What I liked about what you were saying was, it's like, how can we help you to live a better life? What do you need to help, for us to help you help yourself have a better life? So I love the idea of going where people are, finding out what their needs are, and then serving them as best as your staff can. So do you have volunteers that help you? How are the volunteer thing going on at Columbus House?
So Columbus House, we just had our 40th birthday party, and what I said at that
Happy
event,
birthday.
And it's totally true, thank you, is that Columbus House is entirely a community effort. There is no Columbus House without the community. It's not just the people that work there, it's not just the people who are served there, it's really all of us. And it's a place that all of us get to sort of pour our energy and live our values. And so that's true for people like me who are lucky enough to work at Columbus House, and it's true for really thousands of people who have volunteered over the years and continue to volunteer at Columbus House. The pandemic certainly made our volunteer models really complicated and a lot more challenging. So for years we had meal service groups, for example, from churches who would sort of come in the first Tuesday of every month was like their night for, decades.
Decades.
So like everything else, that's been really challenging, but it's been really inspiring and beautiful to see how people have found different ways to contribute. So it's really was amazing at the beginning of the pandemic that to be a part of a group of people when we were all in so much fear and we were so uncertain about what was going to happen. But, some people in their community also said, how are other people in my community going to get through this? How are the people who are experiencing homelessness going to get through this? And turned to Columbus House and poured their energy and their donations into making sure that people who are experiencing homelessness were going to get through it. And we were incredibly successful. We had 0 people die of COVID in emergency shelter. I know.
That's
awesome.
That's truly amazing.
It really is
amazing. Truly amazing.
I mean, there's definitely something, there's definitely elements beyond us that were part of that. But it's also because we were able to move people into hotel rooms and keep them in hotel rooms where they were less exposed to congregate space.
Excellent. That's excellent. That really tells us a lot about what's going on. So if we back up a little bit, could you explain to our viewers who might not understand what might cause a person to fall into homelessness? I know housing costs here in Connecticut are very expensive, so I know we were chatting about that, but what causes somebody to fall into homelessness?
So glad you asked that, Bernadette. It's my favorite question. I'm kind of on a crusade about this particular question because I think in a lot of our imaginations, and I would include myself before I got involved in this field, we think of like, well, the person who's experiencing homelessness has a serious mental illness. I see them talking to themselves on the side of the road. Or the person who is experiencing mental illness has a significant substance abuse problem or substance use disorder is the proper term for that. So that's why they're homeless. And what I've learned over the years, and I think what we've embraced as an organization at Columbus House, is that homelessness is fundamentally a housing problem. It's the lack of affordable housing. And when we have a society like ours, where we don't have enough affordable housing for everybody, the people who aren't going to be housed are the people least able to compete for that housing. So it's going to be people with disabilities, it's going to be people with substance use disorders, it's going to be people whose families have a hard time supporting them. And so I want to make a shift for people that it's less about sort of this individual's challenge and more about what we collectively value as a society and the extent to which we agree that making sure everybody has a place to live is a priority for us. And I think when we think about it that way and we see it as being a collective problem, that we own that, Bernadette, you and I, right? Like it's up to us in our towns and communities to say, like, do we have enough housing for everybody who lives here? Rather than saying, like, if only that person got sober, if only that person was medicated. All the medication and 12-step programs in the world aren't going to end homelessness in our communities until there's enough housing for everybody.
And that it is affordable and that it makes sense for folks. And that's a big challenge in our community. I think you're not trying to make it sound easy. It is not. It's
no, I'm not.
No.
It's a big challenge.
It is a big challenge because, there's almost only so much space in the state of Connecticut or in any state, and to find affordable housing units and have it be viable. I mean, how does that work? So what we're trying to say is, let's think about this. Let's try to come up with solutions for this instead of throwing up our hands and saying, oh, if these people weren't so sick, it wouldn't be a problem. It's something that we need to start focusing on solutions. And I wish more people, and I know you're an advocate of this, would just start thinking about solutions to it. How do we do that?
Well, yeah, and also I understand people's reticence about changing their own communities add like the idea of adding affordable housing, for example, to their own neighborhood, because people choose their neighborhood, they like their neighborhood the way it is, and they imagine change, and it can feel scary or uncomfortable. People can feel like the other, like if you don't know them and you don't have any exposure or interaction with people, they can seem very different. They almost always tend not to be very different, actually, when it gets down to it.
But
so I can understand that there's a reticence and that it can be it can cause concern for people. But I think that if we, that until we sort of take it on as our problem and accept that it is on us as people, for example, who are housed. I mean, I'm a homeowner. I feel incredibly fortunate to say that. And it is like I'm part of the solution of changing the structures and the systems so that there's enough housing for everybody. And that might change my commute. It might make it harder for me to take a right, or a left out of my neighborhood. It might mean that there's more kids in my kids' school trying to get into the after-school program. I don't know. There's
an adjustments that would have to be made by everybody in the community in order to come up with some solutions about having affordable housing. So I'm glad we talked about that. But before we get too carried away, I want us to see the video, an incredible short 5-minute video that highlights the story of one person.
I love this.
His name is Joe.
Yep.
So Victor, can we see this video about Joe's story?
I wrote a poem. I'd like to share it with you. And this poem came from being on York Street in New Haven, panhandling. Excuse me, sir, can you spare 50 cents? Sir, can you spare $1? As the day set, 5 o'clock came, the sun's going down, everything, and you begin to see people dispersing, going out to their different destinations, wherever they're going, whether home or... The poem goes like this. It's called A Life of a Homeless Man. Sometimes I like to pretend that I'm away from the office, out getting a bite to eat, or just taking some time to cool off a bit. But with no place to return to, those thoughts fade. And soon again, it's only you, watching people branch off to their different destinations, while yet you're on this journey, hoping to find home. So right now, that's my goal in life, to find home. My motto has always been that, if you don't touch drugs, you can make it. But once you do get involved with drugs, it's a downfall, It's a matter of time, and down spirals and everything, and you become homeless real fast, And I've been homeless a couple times. I've been homeless probably like about since 17 years old, on and off. But been homeless too, also in Bridgeport, 5 years, eating in soup kitchens every day, 11 to 11:30, feeding, washing up in train stations, having to carry all your belongings around with you. It's difficult trying to apply for a job, fill out an application. You're outside, the wind's blowing and everything, and in the midst of all that, you just kind of, end up giving up hope. But when you do become homeless, I will say this, that you got to work fast to get back on your feet, because after about 3-4 months, you kind of set in and you settle for whatever it is, and it's hard to get out of that rut. So here we are in New Haven Green, and I'll show you one of my spots where I used to sleep out at, and in fact, it's over here on this here bench here. I spent many nights there, just hanging out. Sometimes panhandling, trying to get change up and stuff. Many cold nights, and I pretty much stayed in the light. Plus, being that building was right there, and the police station over there, or a sub, And they say that I'm next on the list, and I'm waiting to see about a certificate called, it's called RAP. I don't know if you heard of it, but what it does is it's permanent housing, and it's for people that don't even have money or anything or any kind of income. You're still able to get housing, and everything comes included, which is nice. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, it's the waiting. Somewhere's at the end of the road, there is an apartment. My time will come, and it's good. It's a good experience, because along the way, when someone else is in this boat, I can be able to tell them and encourage them too that I've been right where you're at, in the waiting and so on, but in the end, you will get a place. You can make it, you will make it.
Okay, well, that touched on almost everything that we were talking about. It showed, I think you'd agree, Margaret, that once he was housed, he was able to improve. And he spoke about so many things. What would you like to highlight about what Joe had to say on the video?
I mean, I'm really grateful to Joe that he was so willing to be vulnerable and share that with your viewers and with other people who have visited our website and seen that story over the years. I think it takes a lot for a person to share so much of themselves. And I think, to me, when I watch that, I hope that people listen to him and they're sort of like, he sounds like somebody I know, because, I just think there's a mentality that there's like a real difference between people who are experiencing homelessness and me. And the reality is, listen to Joe. Like, he could be your brother, he could be your dad.
Yeah, he could be anybody. There by the grace of God go I. I mean, it could be anybody.
Yeah, and I think, I listen to him and I'm thinking, there's probably some people who are sort of like, well, if you don't have any income, why should you have this apartment? Why should he have this subsidy? And I think, when I listen to it, I think, how can we let somebody who's 17, enter into this, like, have so little that as a society, and an incredibly rich and fortunate society, we don't have more to offer young people who are starting out. And so I'm so grateful that as a community we were able to support him. And I am happy to say we checked with him before we, sent this video to you, and he's doing really well. He was happy for us to use the video. He's, still moving on with things, and awesome. I know it was really, really kind of him to let us share that. So,
well, that is great. So I'm so glad we had an opportunity. Thank you for letting us share Joe's story on our program today. So, I think Joe talked about the blessing of getting into housing and improving. So, what do people need to do to stay housed? So I think part of do you still offer enrichment programs at Columbus House? Are there things that people can they're housed, they're improving, and there are other skills that they might need to keep on keeping on?
Sure.
So
at Columbus House, we provide as many wraparound services as we can for people. So that means, in addition to sort of case management, which is sort of like the relationship you have with somebody who can support what you're trying to do, we also have services that help people with employment. So a lot of people are looking for work. They're trying to get back into the workforce. They're looking for assistance with putting all of the pieces together for getting back into the workforce. There's people who are trying to get onto disability benefits, maybe Social Security disability. And historically, people who are experiencing homelessness are much, much less likely to be granted Social Security than other people, which actually the Social Security Administration has recognized and tried to address. So that's something that we might help people with. I just met yesterday a young person that we hired. Sorry, he looked young to me. I don't know. Hired somebody to be a financial coach, so to support people in managing their money, which when you don't have a lot of it becomes a harder and harder task.
How do you know what to do?
Exactly. So there's a range of things that we try to provide people. We have really awesome partnerships with our medical partners. So Cornell Scott, Hill Health, and Yale New Haven Health being two very important ones for us and our ability to serve the needs of our clients. I should mention also CMHC.
Yeah.
And so we're really fortunate to be able to like work really closely with them. I mean, Yale New Haven Hospital and Cornell Scott Hill Health are both physically have space inside our buildings in which they work. So they're more than partners. I mean, they're really like integrated into the work that we're doing.
Excellent. So it's all about bringing resources together through Columbus House that makes sense to help keep people housed and to help them get on with their lives.
Yep.
Which makes perfect sense to me. I hope it makes perfect sense to all our viewers because we would love for them to care as well. So how does the community support Columbus House? So you touched a little bit on the churches getting involved.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about Abraham's tent, but
Yes.
how does the community support Columbus House? How can we do that?
So I can't say enough about how grateful all of us at Columbus House are for the work that we get to do with the community together to support people experiencing homelessness. There is not a day that there's literally not a day that there isn't a volunteer involved at Columbus House. And obviously financial donations that people make in addition to donating materials, that people need.
Socks.
Yeah. Socks are a classic one. Coming up this winter, we'll do a drive for what we call welcome kits, which are essentially like all the things you need to move into an apartment. So we help, several hundred people a year move into a new apartment, and all of those people are going to need a sponge. And they're going to need a dish towel, and they're going to need some paper towels, and they're going to need, they're going to need a new pillow, like all of these things. And so we have this list of things that is called a welcome kit. And often, in groups at an employer, at a school, at a
church,
a community of faith will work together to put those together in addition to individual donors. And then you mentioned Abraham's tent, which is like really like incredibly close to my heart. So if I can share that with your viewers.
What is Abraham's tent?
And Bernadette and I are kind of smiling because Bernadette's actually participated in this.
Yes,
so
I
it's
have.
like a real.
Yes, I have. It's like such a cool.
It's really
thing.
beautiful, and it's very much due to my predecessor, Allison Cunningham. It's like really a passion project for her. So Abraham's tent is a program where in the winter in Greater New Haven we don't have enough space to bring people inside. And actually this winter we anticipate being down a considerable number of shelter beds. There was just a piece in the Register this weekend about that. So we're incredibly concerned going into this winter. And this program creates additional winter shelter beds in local congregations. So congregations like your own congregation, Spring Glen UCC,
yes.
shout out to my neighborhood,
right.
Will create essentially shelter space for 10 or 12 people in their congregation. So it might be in their rec room, it might be in their sanctuary, wherever it makes sense. And then the congregations and their neighboring congregations, because often the congregations partner up to do this, different faiths and different parts of the community come together in one place, and they staff this. So Columbus House brings the clients there in the evening, and then this congregation or several congregations will get together and provide a meal, and then they'll stay up all night, because if you have something like supporting people through homelessness, you have to have somebody there to like support them all the time. And so it's an incredible investment of volunteerism on the part of these congregations. And it is so beautiful because the gentlemen who do this move around 1 week at every congregation, and they go all over the place. One thing I really value about the program is that people go out into the suburbs, which oftentimes we don't think about as being places where people are homeless, but Bernadette, they are. And so it's nice to have these congregations have this connection, and also for the clients to have the connection to these other communities outside of sort of like the core downtown areas.
And can I say that?
Yes,
I say please that the times that I have been involved with Abraham's tent, I would make my famous chicken dinner. And my girlfriends would make the sides, and I would make the chicken dinner, and other people would come in and they would bring puzzles and games and music, and it was set up in our great hall, and we created as much privacy as we could, and we said grace because that's what our church does before meals. And then we had an opportunity after the folks got their meals to sit down and have dinner with them and talk to them about their lives and their hopes and their dreams. And I can't tell you how enriched, Margaret, I felt every time I volunteered to make that chicken dinner. My night was Wednesday, and to do that. and to experience those wonderful people who are really almost ready to go out into the community. I think they're selected because they're almost ready. And it was just wonderful. So I know I'm talking about myself, I'm sorry, but I'm really talking about Abraham's Tent.
No, you're a great ambassador for Abraham's Tent, and it's beautiful in a lot of ways. The connections that congregants like you make with these clients, the connections the clients make with each other, the connections the congregations make together is really cool to see, having these different groups come together. And then we have a meeting at the beginning and the end of the season where we get to see everybody together, and you really feel the power of how many people in our community are committed to the ending of homelessness. Sure. But I think what you said is exactly right, which is, a huge part of what I think we are trying to do at Columbus House is ending the stigma of homelessness. It's not just ending this individual person's experience of homelessness, but
yeah, for sure. And I wish we had so much time to talk, but I want the folks to know how they can learn more about Columbus House and your website. So we're going to put up a graphic now that shows your address, your phone number, your website. So if somebody were to go on the website when they see it, I think there it is. What will they find when they go to columbushouse.org? Will they be able to donate? What's there?
Of course, Bernadette. Please
Silly
make a
question.
donation. Absolutely, you can make a donation to Columbus House, and we would be grateful for that. But also other ways to get involved, like there are always volunteer opportunities at Columbus House, and volunteer opportunities really run the gamut. So we think of sort of traditional things like meal service or something more involved like Abraham's Tent, but also what about doing a sock drive like you said at your school, or having Columbus House come in and talk to your group. I got a great opportunity to go in and talk to a group of kindergarten and first grade students this year, and they get the injustice of homelessness in a really core way. Small children are that is not okay. They understand how important it is to feel safe at home. They really do. So if you have, a group, a work group, a school group, a congregation, ladies who lunch, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Columbus House would love to come and talk to them about the importance of ending homelessness and how they can contribute. So there's a million ways.
That is so excellent, and I'm going to put this out on my Facebook page and to get people to understand how many great ways they could do it. And you will be getting more out of it than you realize by just doing something for somebody else. There's no judgment involved. It's just doing something that will benefit other people. And I think that the kindness of the community is what Community Works is all about. It's what people really are looking for, ways to make our world better. And Columbus House is a way that they can channel that goodness.
That's what we're here for. And I couldn't agree with you more that people sometimes say to me, working with homeless people, isn't that depressing? And I'm like, are you kidding? I get to do something where I feel like I'm adding value to other people's lives every day.
Every day.
There's no better feeling.
Every day.
So come join us.
So come join us for sure. So you just had an event on the 22nd of September. I'm sure that
we did. It was a huge success. Beautiful event.
And real quick, is there anything coming up real soon? An event coming up real soon?
Not an event, but people can look out for the welcome kit. There'll be a mailer about that. That's a big drive for us.
Okay, great. So if people want to be on your mailing list, that's another way that they'll know what's going on at Columbus House. That's great.
Please do.
Okay, I believe that's it. I think we have explored this wonderful idea of overcoming homelessness by working with Columbus House. So I want to thank my guest, Margaret Middleton, the Executive Director. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Bernadette.
And folks, we'll see you again real soon. Bye for now.